everybody. So my name is Miss Marina or Miss Rodriguez, and today I'm going to be talking about coping with big feelings through breathing techniques. There are a lot of coping skills that hopefully we are going to be teaching you to put in your toolbox. A coping skill is basically something that you can do to help yourself calm down or to cope or basically live with or accept or tolerate discomfort or things that maybe we don't like or that don't feel good. So, for example, right now, all of us don't really, I'm sure most of us at least, really don't like being stuck at home and not being able to go out and mingle with our friends or do the things we're used to doing, like our sports and activities. And a lot of those might have been coping techniques to deal with our everyday stressors. We might have played soccer every week, and that might have helped us to keep our endorphins up and to feel better. And now that we can't do that, we might be feeling worse. So we kind of have to learn how to cope with that situation. And so what I'm going to teach us today can be used for any stressful situation. But I did want to give a little bit of background about what kind of happens in our brains or to our bodies when we're feeling really overwhelmed or something is happening. So, like I said, just going to summarize. Today we're talking about coping with big feelings through breathing techniques. Now, the first thing I just wanted to kind of share is a little bit about the brain. So our brain is very complex. There's a lot going on there, but I really just wanted to give two basics. One part of the brain, as you can see in the front, is what's called the prefrontal cortex. And that's what this is pointing out here. And that's our ability to think and reason and make logical decisions and things like that. Now, down here is the amygdala. See this bar? And this is basically what's considered kind of the survival part of our brain. And the amygdala will get triggered if we feel like there's a threat. Then we feel like, oh my gosh, we have to survive this somehow. When that happens, see this red mark? It takes down the prefrontal cortex and this stops working. So think of it like all the blood rushes to your survival part of your brain and it has to leave this part of the brain. Because you need to survive. So you might need to run. So if you think of an animal in the wild, it's going to fight, flight, or freeze, right? So it's like a deer in headlights is going to freeze, or like a possum maybe will play dead, and that's frozen. But it also might fight. Like think of what would a tiger do in this situation, or it might flee. So it might run away. Think of like what a rabbit might do in this situation, or a mouse. And so what happens in all those wild animals and human bodies is we feel a threat and we have to realize, oh my gosh, not us. We're not thinking. Our brain's not thinking. Like I said, all the brain has left. All the blood has left the front of our brain, has moved to a survival spot. And that survival part of the brain, the amygdala, has to make a decision for us, and it's going to decide what's safest. Are we going to do this, this, or this? And so we kind of fall into that. And sometimes we might freeze initially and then run, or we might run, or we might fight, and then it doesn't work, and so we freeze. There's a lot of things that go on. And we could actually talk about this probably another day because there's so much involved. But I just want to give you the basics of these two parts of the brain. So prefrontal cortex, this is where we think and reason. Amygdala, this is how we survive. Now, you see in this situation, we have a human example where somebody who looks feminine is noticing there's a fire, and so they're scared. So they might initially freeze because they realize, oh my goodness, there's a fire, I'm in shock. And then they're probably going to run away. They're probably not going to fight it because depending on the situation, right? So they're probably going to run. But what's happening in her body, if we can assume that this is somebody who identifies as she, what's happening in her body is probably everything has left from the front part of her brain, and now she's in her survival mode. So she's not really thinking clearly. She's just trying to get out of there and survive. And her body afterwards might feel really tired because it's worked overtime to kind of help her survive, and it's done all these things to help her run. So maybe like her muscles probably tightened, her heart is probably racing. There's probably a lot of things physically happening in her body that she's going to have to calm down from. And she might be really tired. She might just pass out. She might cry and then pass out. She might shake. There's a lot of things that she might do that are going to help her body kind of calm down, and then she can kind of feel safe again. Now, in the next slide, you can probably see here she is reacting to a pop quiz, and she starts to feel in threat, like, oh my goodness, am I going to fail this class now? And, her brain is telling her all these things, saying like, you're never going to pass it. And she's freaking out. And it feels like there's a fire, like she's going into that threat response of, oh my goodness, my emotional or mental or whatever security is at risk. And it feels the same as if her physical safety is at risk. And so her body is reacting just like it would to a fire, but it's reacting kind of inappropriately. But that's what our brains and our bodies do, is it kind of sometimes exaggerates the threat of what's going on. It's actually not that scary, but we think it is because that's what our brain or our body's telling us. So in this case, she's feeling that level of threat about something that's maybe a little bit not as threatening, definitely not as threatening. So she's going to have to figure out, how am I going to get to the point where my brain, the prefrontal cortex that I need to think and learn and reason and use logic, I need that in order to take this test. And how am I going to get like that when I'm only in this part of my brain? I'm only in the survival part. So she's going to have to use a coping technique such as breathing that we're going to talk about today to get her brain to calm down and come back so that she has the front part again. Now, to illustrate this, I like to use something called Dr. Dan Siegel. He's an author that writes about the brain, and he uses what's called the hand model of the brain. And I really enjoy his model. So I want you guys to follow along and kind of put out your hand and put your thumb inside of your hand, and then put the front fingers or all the other fingers in the front of the thumb. Now, if you think of it like this, you think this is my brain. This represents your brain. The fingers are your prefrontal cortex. This is, again, where you can think, use logic, reason, make sound decisions, okay? Your thumb is the amygdala. This is the survival part that's going to decide fight, flight, or freeze. So we have our normal brain. This is how we're normally functioning in our everyday when we just feel like normal and, nothing bad has happened or we're not freaking out. Okay. Now, when we go to this slide, you can see what happened here. This is what we call, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this phrase, flipping your lid, but basically when you flip your lid, that means you feel a big emotion. So something big happens. Like I said, either it could be a fire, it could be a pop quiz, it could be seeing somebody that's hurt you before and it makes you feel scared. There could be a lot of things, and everyone has different things that might make them feel a big emotion. For some of us, there's really specific things, like someone ignores you and that for you is really big, or someone lies to you and that for you is really big. That's normal to feel a big emotion and related to that. And so what happens is in our brain, we're going, whoa, I'm in threat, or I'm in fear or whatever, and I need to survive this. And so you're not able to think straight anymore. So if anyone's ever been in a situation, let's say you're getting into an argument with your sibling and they really upset you, you later, when you think about it, you might not even remember how you reacted, or you might have reacted in a way you would not normally react. And that's because this prefrontal cortex was not being used. You were so upset that you had flipped your lid, and then you were just in this threat response, and you might have done like a fight response, for example. You might have hit somebody or something. Well, that's because you did not take a chance to cope and help your brain come back first before trying to work out the problem. So typically when you're feeling like this, that's normal and we all go through it. But what we want to do as we're getting older and kind of maturing is learn, how do I bring myself back and then return to the situation now that I'm calm and now I can reason and then deal with the conflict. So as you can see in the slide, it says, when I feel a big emotion, I flip my lid. So prefrontal cortex leaves. We're stuck in survival. And it says my amygdala is in charge. And again, the amygdala is the part, the survival part that I keep mentioning. Okay. So now, lastly, like I said, when you use a coping technique such as breathing, your prefrontal cortex comes back. And now it's in charge again, which is how it should be. We want to be in a place, as much as possible and as much as we have control over, where we can make our own decisions and we can think about it and we can think clearly, and we're not all in this chaotic state where we can't think straight. So if you've ever thought like someone's asking you a question, you're like, I don't know, I can't think. You'll probably have your lid flipped at that time. Okay, so on our first type of breathing, it's called rainbow breathing. And so at home, you can follow along with just the picture on my screen. You're also welcome to color your own rainbow to do this with during this presentation or on your own time after. So I'm just going to have you quickly kind of follow along with what it says. It says to place your finger at the bottom of the rainbow, and I want you to pick red first. So go ahead and put your finger at the bottom of the red arc and breathe in through your nose. And trace it till you get to the top of the arc, and then you go ahead and breathe out through your mouth. So you go in through your nose, top of the arc, out through your mouth. Then you go to orange. In through your nose, top of the arc, out through your mouth. So for this, what I like about it is very visual. It forces you to focus on the color. So you remember, oh, am I on red or am I on orange? Am I yellow? And it's very simple. And there's 6 colors. So as you see on number 4, it says repeat each color until you feel calm and grounded. So 6 breaths might not be sufficient to help your body calm down, and you might need to go through it again, and that's perfectly fine. Go through it as many times as you need. Okay, and I just recommend, like I mentioned, either doing this with your actual finger on an actual rainbow at home or in your mind. You can use your imagination to imagine a rainbow and going up, stopping, and then switching. So you're going in through your nose, stop, out through your mouth, okay? We are now on the next type of breathing, which is called square breathing or box breathing, alternatively. With square or box breathing, basically, sorry, it's not flipping. There it goes. Basically, the point is that you're doing counts of 4 and you're going to keep it even. There are some types of breathing that the numbers change. So for example, with 5-3-7 breathing, it would be like in for 5, hold for 3, out for 7. And that might be something we go over another time. But with box breathing, it's just so simple. It's just 4, 4, 4, 4. So again, you can trace it in your mind, or you don't have to do the actual visual part of it. But for the purpose of today's lesson, we are doing it visually. So you're going to trace it from the corner of the box, and you breathe in for 4, and then you hold for 4, and then you breathe out for 4, and then you hold for 4, and then in for 4, hold, out, hold. So it goes hold, it goes in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold. Okay, so we're going to just do it one time together. So in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, right? Out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that's the second one. And now we are on our final type of breathing. You can probably use literally any image and use it as a breathing technique. These are just 3 that I like. So feel free to pick one that's your favorite or find another shape and use it this way. But for the last one, I do like cacti. So I'm using a cactus. You can draw your own cactus at home and color it to make it more fun. But you're just going to start from the bottom and then you breathe in. This is kind of like the rainbow breathing. You're going to breathe in. You're going to hold when you get to the end of the first arm. And then and this is just as you trace. So just naturally, you don't have to count or anything. You just go in, hold. And then as you come down, you breathe out. And then you breathe in, hold when you get to the top, out when you go down, in, hold, and then out when you go down. Okay. And then you just trace it as many times. So I hope at least one of these techniques, or hopefully all 3, could be useful for you when you're feeling like you might have flipped your lid. Have an awesome day.